All right. Good morning, sixth grade. Today's lesson is going to be very short and concise. Um, I know you guys are overwhelmed with a lot of work, and I want to keep it short and simple, but also very objective driven. Um, in your files for today, so today's channel is Unit 5. Let me just move this over here. Today's channel is Unit 5, Lesson 4, April 3. Okay, today's April 3, so you're going to click there, and you're going to go to Files. So go to Files right here, and you'll see that there's only two files, guided notes and the PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to present right now. Okay, so your guided notes, all it is all the notes that I think very essential for today's lesson, and I provided questions that go with the reading. My recommendation is that you do this on your own. So you read through this, annotate like I taught you. I know some of you guys have iPads or other devices where you can actually document and highlight and annotate on the side. I think that's amazing. If you can do that, please do so. I encourage that because this is a skill that you really need. Again, not only for middle school but high school and especially in college. So please go ahead and take this time to go through that on your own. I prefer that. I will still provide a lecture right now if you still want me to go through the PowerPoint and just give a little bit of signals of what every bullet point means, okay? And I'll also be giving you the answers for those questions. We're having a small discussion. Some of them can be open-ended answers, okay? So again, if you can do that, go ahead. Or if you have a printer, then you can print them and then you can annotate. And again, you can keep those notes. Make sure that you put at the top the name of the lesson, which is Unit 5, Lesson 4, so that way you can have an idea of what your notes are, so that way when it comes to studying for our unit exam, you'll be ready and you have your notes organized. All right, so if you do not have an iPad, if you don't have a printer, you can simply type them. So please, again, download the file. Don't simply start typing, open the file and start typing. You need to see the video, because I have to say it, I don't know how many times, and I still have students still typing the responses, and what you end up doing is you're going to end up writing the answers for everybody else, and everybody comes into a document that has the answers and they can't really do any thinking. So again, please, I encourage you that you're watching the videos and not rushing through some on your own, okay? Or just not downloading the file. I mean, yeah, not downloading the file, but just simply writing your responses there, okay? So we're going to get started. All right, so the PowerPoint I provided there, the title is The Slave Trade, and this is the objective. By the end of this lecture, you're going to be able to explain the lasting effects of the European slave trade. Okay, so you're doing now is simply to read through the guided notes and make sure that you annotate, answer the questions to stop at the 4th bullet point. Again, if you do not have that, I'll be providing the lecture right now. Okay, so slave trade. Okay, unfortunately, slavery is a practice, okay, that has been not only happened for Europeans capturing Africans and then selling them. This is something that is as old as civilization itself. So this could go back to even before Christianity, before Judaism. Okay, so the beginning of when people started to write laws, organize people together, and raise crops. Okay, farming instead of just going around hunting animals. Once they learn how to build communities, you have pretty much the beginning of slavery since then. Okay. Evidence of this, you can see this through Egyptian hieroglyphics of pictures, where slavery was very common back then. And the reasons why, again, our unit is focusing on Africa and history. Okay, so we're going to see the rationale of why Europeans will take advantage of the African communities to capture them and then sell them. Okay, all right. So this all started out with the Portuguese, and I'll show you a map right now so you can see who the Portuguese are. Okay, they were the first Europeans to explore Africa. They were more interested in trading for gold than for slaves. The colonization of the Americas changed the focus of trade. So once the discovery of America happened, and that was with Columbus, supposedly, of course, we can always go to debates on that. And again, think about the lesson about the history and bias, okay? So once America was discovered by the Europeans, that's going to change. It's all going to change, especially for the Portuguese, okay? So the Portuguese, you can barely see them right there. I'm having my mouse cursor right there. This is Portugal. They are going to be the first ones who are going to take advantage of the slave trade. They say, you know what, let's let go of slavery. How about we capture people and then we move them over here? And this will be what continent? South America. And what country is this? This is modern day Brazil. And today they speak Portuguese. Okay. So out of all of South America, from Mexico all the way down here, it's Spanish, except for here. Brazil will be Portuguese. Okay. So again, this is from a small little country right there. You can barely see right next to France. They managed to capture all of this. Okay. And the sad part, and I gave you this lesson before, one of the days when I called in, and I wasn't there at work. Brazil was the last country in the world, to abolish slavery. Okay, that means to end slavery. Second will be the United States, and they ended slavery in 1865. So, just keep that in mind. This is just a little context about the emergence of slavery. All right, one note that I forgot to make for the ones who are probably already annotating, please go through the PowerPoint because there's visuals that I provided, so that go with your notes so that we can have an understanding of what you're reading. I know that just reading words is not sufficient. You still need to have the visuals to see what's going on. I provided maps so you can see, and one of the questions in your exit ticket requires you to understand one of the components of where the slave trade emerged or what was going on. Okay. All right. So if you need, if you prefer lectures or if you need a little extra help, okay, I'm gonna be reading the notes to you out loud. Just follow along. I know the red words are the words that I usually want you guys to. Those are the power words to really think about. Okay. All right. Slavery has existed for thousands of years around the world. However, before the Atlantic slave trade, Atlantic, that's the ocean between Europe and the Americas. In the 1500s, slavery was essentially part of war. That means slavery is simply if you were captured by the enemy, it's very common that you'll become a slave for the other country. And slaves were generally treated as human beings with wed rights, who could often work to free themselves or were even integrated as part of the family. So back then it was like, oh, you're captured, okay. But don't worry, there's a chance you can get out, you can get your freedom, see your family one day. Okay, that was the system that was developed first. The Atlantic slave trade saw slavery become an economic institution. When you see the word economic, what are the two things that you need to think of? And that should be jobs and money, okay? In which human beings were labeled as a commodity, that means like an object, and stripped of all rights and even status as fellow humans, okay? So again, in the 1500s, it all changed, okay? Remember, this goes back, slavery goes back thousands of years, but in the 1500s, the perception of what slavery was started to change, okay? So right here, there's a map. Let me see if I can zoom in. There's a map so you can see the high amount of slave exporting from Africa and what parts. So you have the bigger the lines, the more slaves were being exported. So you can see in the Americas there's multiple lines, but you can see the vast amount were being exported to South America, and that's modern day Brazil. All right, let me zoom out. For example, in the American colonies and the early United States, slaves could be murdered by their owners. That means the ones who own them, okay? With no consequence in many places. And there were laws that actually made it difficult or even illegal to free slaves. So, in the Americas, starting in Jamestown in 1607, slavery was, because it's a new colony, and they basically are away from the mother country, they could design their own laws about what to do about slavery. So a lot of them took up and said, you know what, we're the owners and they're our property, and if they get killed or they murder them, that's fine. That will be fine to them. Like they see that as their own property, and that's their own viable right. And of course, that's unethical. Okay. All right. So you have a CFU question. How long has slavery been part of human history? And what was different about the Atlantic slave trade than the previous slavery models? Take about 1 or 2 minutes to answer those two questions. Press pause, and I'll give you guys the answer in a bit. Okay, so how long has slavery been part of human history? And that will be for dozens of years. And what was different about the Atlantic slave trade than previous slavery models? So in the previous slavery models before the Atlantic slave trade, slaves have basic rights and they could earn their freedom. In the Atlantic slave trade, it changed. They now basically became property. They had no rights and they were property for life. They were slaves for the rest of their lives. Okay. Are we gonna move on to the next part of the lecture? All right. This part is very, very important. So I need you to be focused on this part real quick. Okay. So the European or Atlantic slave trade involved millions of people and had lasting effects on Africa, Europe, and the Americas even today. So notice that this affected 3 continents: Africa, so Africa's right here, Europe over here, and the Americas, which is over here, North and South America. So this is called the Atlantic slave trade. Okay, that's another name. Okay, this is also known as the triangular trade because of the shape that it makes. Now I'm gonna go over the importance of each of those lines. Okay. So I provided this picture right here so you can see. Let me see, what time is this? 11:20. Okay. What each line is representing. So let's start off with the Americas. In the Americas, this is where you have Jamestown, where you have the early colonies that the Europeans came over here and they started. So in the Americas, the colonies are going to provide raw materials. Okay, if you don't know what raw materials are, let me explain that real quick. Raw materials are things as this. If you see in this picture, it says tobacco, cotton, sugar, and rum. Those are things that are unfinished. They're not finished. So think of fruits, think of timber, metal, minerals. All those things that are unfinished, those are raw materials. What can you do with wood? You can build homes, you can build ships, and so on. But before it becomes a ship, if you just have a collection of wood, that's a raw material. But now that will take us to the next part. All these raw materials, things that are not finished. Think of, like, let's say, for example, you're a colonist, you're cutting down trees, cutting down a lot of wood, okay? And you have a business where you're cutting trees down, okay? All that lumber, you're gonna send it to Europe. And in Europe, you're gonna sell it to them for a price, okay? Europe is gonna buy all your lumber, and then they're gonna use your lumber to make things. And that's what it leads over here, what I'm pointing, manufactured goods. So you have, you're a business owner in Europe, you need lumber, this colonist who has a lumber business, you contact him, hey, I want to buy all your lumber. You buy all the lumber, and now you're going to use all that raw material also known as wood to make things. You're going to start making ships. You're going to start making chairs, things like that. When you make those things, remember when we talk about the economy, okay? We have primary, secondary, tertiary, okay? And the primary sector, they're pulling things out. That's what the colonies are doing. They're a primary sector. And in Europe, that's what they're going to be like the secondary. They're going to manufacture things, create things, okay? And Europe is what they're going to do with all those manufactured things is they're going to send it to Africa. Now you may be wondering, what's the deal? Well, in Africa, they needed manufactured goods. They didn't have guns. They didn't have tables, ships, any of those things of the sort. So Africa will start a business with Europe. And this is going to be, unfortunately, a bad practice that you will see that how Europe and some African leaders were going to take advantage of their own communities or neighboring tribes, okay, which we'll discuss right now.